Welcome. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of contracts. Have you ever wondered what really goes into a contract? It's more than just a signature on paper. Contracts are the backbone of business, daily life, and even simple transactions like buying groceries. In this video, we'll break down the key elements that make up a contract, explore how terms are classified, and see how courts interpret these agreements. By the end, you'll have a clear understanding of what makes a contract tick and why every word matters. Let's start by exploring the basic building blocks of a contract and why they're so important. Every contract is made up of terms, but not all terms play the same role. Some terms define the very nature of the contract, while others add details or special conditions. Understanding the role of each term helps both parties know their rights and obligations. For example, in a lease, terms about the property, duration, and rent are crucial. Other terms might address maintenance or special agreements. By identifying the role of each term, you can better protect your interests and avoid misunderstandings. Next, let's see how these terms are classified based on their importance. Contract terms are grouped into three main categories: essentialia, naturalia, and incidentalia. Essentialia are the core terms that identify the contract type, like price and item in a sale. Naturalia are terms automatically included by law, even if not written down, such as the right to use leased property. Incidentalia are extra terms the parties agree on, like who pays for repairs. Knowing these categories helps you spot which terms are vital, which are standard, and which are negotiable. Let's look at each category in more detail. Essentialia are the must-have terms that define a contract's type. For example, in a contract of sale, the essentialia are the item being sold and the price. Without these, there's no valid contract of sale. In a lease, the essentialia include the property, the rental amount, and the lease duration. These terms are non-negotiable if you want your contract to be recognized as a specific type. Missing an essential term can mean your contract isn't legally enforceable. Next, we'll see how naturalia fill in the gaps. Naturalia are terms that the law automatically includes in certain contracts, even if the parties don't mention them. For example, in a lease, the law might imply that the tenant can use the whole property. These terms protect both parties and ensure fairness. If you want to change a naturalia, you must specifically agree to do so in your contract. Otherwise, the law's default rules apply. Understanding naturalia helps you know what's automatically covered and what you might want to negotiate. Incidentalia are all the extra terms that parties add to a contract to suit their specific needs. These could include who pays for utilities in a lease or delivery terms in a sale. Incidentalia are fully negotiable and allow parties to customize their agreement. They add flexibility and detail, but they can't override essentialia or mandatory naturalia unless the law allows. Always review incidentalia carefully. They can make or break a deal. Not all contract terms are included in the same way. Some are written down, some are spoken, and others are implied by law or custom. Understanding how terms become part of a contract helps you know what you're really agreeing to. The main ways are express terms, clearly stated, implied terms, added by law or trade usage, tacit terms, so obvious they go unstated, and imposed terms required by law or insisted on by one party. Let's break down each type. Express terms are those you can see or hear written in the contract or spoken out loud. Implied terms are not stated but are added by law or trade custom. Tacit terms are so obvious that both parties assume them even if not discussed. Imposed terms are required by law or demanded by one party as a condition for the contract. Knowing the difference helps you spot what's actually binding and what's just background noise. Ever parked your car and received a ticket with fine print? Or seen a big notice at a store entrance? These tickets and notices can contain terms that become part of your contract even if you didn't read them. For these terms to be binding, the owner must take reasonable steps to bring them to your attention before you enter the contract. This includes clear, legible writing and prominent placement. Let's look at some real-life examples and court cases that show how this works. Let's explore a few famous cases. In Thornton v. Shoe Lane parking, the court found that a parking ticket's terms were not binding because they weren't brought to the customer's attention before the contract was made. In Chapelton v. Barry, a beach chair ticket was just a receipt, not a contract document, so its terms didn't apply. These cases show that timing, clarity, and context matter. If you want terms to stick, make sure they're clear and delivered before the deal is done. When disputes arise, courts must interpret what contract terms really mean. They look at the plain meaning of words, the context, and the purpose of the contract. Courts aim to uphold the contract if possible, avoid favouring one side, and minimise inconvenience. If a term is vague, courts may even declare it void. Understanding how interpretation works helps you draft clearer contracts and avoid costly misunderstandings. To wrap up, contracts are made up of different types of terms, each with its own role and way of becoming part of the agreement. Essentialia define the contract, naturalia fill in the gaps, and incidentalia add custom details. Terms can be express, implied, tacit, or imposed. Courts interpret contracts by looking at words, context, and purpose. Always read and understand the terms before you agree, because once you do, you're bound by them. Thanks for watching, and remember, knowledge is your best protection in any contract.